Good morning, everybody. Today's lesson is actually us putting together our colored sheet. So if you have colored paper, fantastic. If not, you can definitely do it on a white sheet of paper. What we're going to do is make the colored sheet together. If you want to add anything to it afterwards, but by all means, make it your own. So the unit that we're working with is permutations and combinations. And that's what's going to be included on tomorrow's test. Now, the first concept that we covered in this particular unit is the fundamental counting principle. Now, we actually spent for sure 2, possibly 3 days on this to take up homework and get everything rectified. And what went with this particular lesson is the question that we wrote at the top of our page, which says, how many choices do I have at each decision making stage? And that question was pervasive. I mean, I must have repeated it, I don't even know how many times, and I hoped you were repeating it to yourself when you were doing the homework. Now, what came out of that is 2 main concepts: the and, which we know means multiplication, and the or, which we know means add. So with the and, these are actions that are being performed one after the other, consecutive decisions. So my best example that I hope you guys will remember is that breakfast example when I go into the cafeteria and I first have to decide on what type of breakfast I'm going to have, pancakes or waffles, and then I need to decide on what type of flavoring I'm going to put on that breakfast. That's the classic and, consecutive decisions. Decide on the breakfast, decide on the flavor. The or are either action is being performed. One action in a certain number of ways, and a second action in a certain number of ways. That are not dependent. So the classic example that I would use here is the magazine book example. And it's right out of our notes. The instruction, I had some magazines and books up at the front of the room, and the instructions were to go up to the front and pick either a magazine or a book. So you're not multiplying the choices. You're going to go back to your seat with one of them. You're adding the choices. Okay? Major concept for the unit. The second major concept that we covered, and again, we spent easily a couple days on factorials. And the formula for factorials that we have to have memorized is n factorial equals n minus 1, n minus 2, n minus 3, ... 3, 2, 1. And we spent, like I said, a couple days on this. You learned about the factorial button. We did some algebraic factorials, and you should definitely expect, you know, an algebraic factorial on the test for sure, of some form. The next concept that we got into was straightforward permutation. And the definition for a permutation is an arrangement of objects in a definite order. And that's the key word right there, in a definite order. All of your permutation questions have very specific instructions. This letter must sit in the middle. This letter must start. These letters must be together. These letters must not be together. Very, very definite, specific, arranging, specific order. What went with that is a beautiful formula, again, of permutation of n choose r, n being the total number of objects, r being the number of objects arranged, and the formula went like this: n factorial over n minus r factorial. And again, you're responsible to have that formula memorized. Okay, before we go on, let's talk about, oh, actually, sorry. What went with this is arrangements of a set of like objects. So you know the classic example of Mississippi. That's what I'm talking about. The teddy bears, lining up the teddy bears that are identical on the shelf. And the formula for that went, let's pretend like all the arrangements are unique. All the letters in Mississippi are unique. And factor out, divide out the like objects, the repeats. Let's write that in. Pretend that objects are unique. Okay, now what I was going to say before I remembered about arrangements of like objects, I was going to say, let's flip our sheet over and let's talk about the types of permutation questions that you would probably expect to be on a test. Okay, so let me give you one more minute. I know this might be going quick. And let's flip. Types of perm questions. Now, obviously, at this point, I would ask for your input, but unfortunately, without you, I'm going to have to list them off for you. Well, you know you're getting a letters question. You know that. You know you're getting a digits question. You know that. Okay, I've told you that right from teaching. You could get something where there's a lineup question, a race question, arranging items on a shelf question. Those are all permutations. You could get, and for sure are going to get, a circle question. Some of the key words in the permutation are the ideas of things being together 2 letters need to be together, 2 people need to be together, not together, 3 people can't be together, you know, so-and-so can't be right beside each other. And you've seen all of these questions on the quizzes that we've worked through. So definitely a letters, definitely a digits, definitely a circle, definitely things together and not together. And then I could spice it up with a lineup or a race or arranging things on the shelf. Okay? The next concept that we got into was combinations. And with combinations, the big difference is that order does not matter. You're not concerned about order whatsoever. You're concerned about just picking what you need to pick. And remember, we had that very first example where I was choosing a number of people to, help at a dance. It didn't matter, just any 3. There was no prestige to the position. There was no assignment of a title. I was just picking 3 people to help me. Now, there are a number of key words that identify a combo, and those key words are group, committee, team, batch, and card hand. A 5-carded hand, an 8-card crazy 8 hand. Okay? Now, there was a formula that also went with it, and it was a combination of n choose r, again, n being your total number of objects, r being your group size. And remember, a combination can also be written like this, and the formula is n factorial over r factorial and minus r factorial. And again, that formula has to be memorized. That will not be on the test. In addition to straightforward combinations, we also covered subsets. And there were 2 types of subset questions. The classic subset question where each particular item has 2 choices, and then we remove our null set. And then the subset with repetition question. This was usually the money questions, the fruit questions, the gumball, and these are finding groups of any size. And it was usually like something times something times something times something minus the null set. The keywords for subset and remember, with a subset, things were left very open-ended. Any different, as many, or as few. Things were very, very left open. There was no definitive group size. It was very, very sort of airy-fairy, pick any size that you want. Okay, let's talk about types of combo questions. What should you expect in terms of combo questions? Well, definitely subsets. And there were 2 different types of subsets, right? You know you're going to see that. There were some really nice wording. No restrictions. Exactly. At least. And remember, there's 2 types of at least questions, okay? There's the at least where you're adding the options, and there's the at least that's the reverse psych. No more than. Or. Must. These were all questions that you've seen in the or wording that you've seen in the homework questions and in the quiz questions. And then I guess the final type is that diminishing balance type of combination, and it's a bit different than most. It was the one, remember that I had so many candies that I was going to give out, 5 of them in period 1, 8 of them in period 2, and 7 of them in the last period. So I basically exhausted. I gave out all of the candies. So many in period 1, so many in period 2, and so many in period 3. So definitely, you know, these are the types of questions that you're going to see reflected on tomorrow's test. I normally tell you, you know, the makeup of the test in terms of how it'll look, and I'm going to do the same today. There's going to be 35 KU questions, 30 application questions, and there'll be 5 marks for communication, bad form, and there'll be 13 questions on the test. So good luck with that tomorrow, and following the test on Tuesday, we'll be starting probability on Wednesday, okay? A full first lesson on probability. Okay, thank you everyone. Take care.